All right. Hey guys, so this is going to be the walkthrough for problem 2 on the Examprep worksheet number 6. And the problem is called Disjoint Sets. So for each of the arrays below, write whether this could be the array representation of a weighted quick union with path compression, and explain your reasoning, explain why. Okay. So the way I like to tackle these disjoint sets, especially when we're given these clean arrays to work with, is just to draw out the trees, right? When you start drawing them out, you'll quickly see that there's some sort of insight to be gained just by looking at how the tree looks. Okay, and then we'll get to this in a second. But for this first one, let's just go ahead and draw out the tree. Okay, so we start with 0 is rooted, or 0's parent is 1. So we have node 0. I'll draw it even lower actually. 0 and its parent is 1, right? And then we already saw that 1's parent is 2, right? And that 2's parent is 3. All good so far, right? But now we see that 3's parent is 0. And this immediately poses a bit of a problem, right? Because now if you wanted to say, so now if we want to run our find operation on like 1, let's say, right? Generally speaking, when you run find, you're going to go all the way up to the top until you get to, the uppermost parent. And so if this link didn't exist, then this would be pretty easy, right? This would return 3 because 3 is the uppermost parent of 1, right? It's like the root of the 1 tree. But since there does exist this, our computer can never find, where the root is, right? It's going to go in this constant cycle around and around, and we'll never be able to figure out where our tree ends. So for that reason, this subtree, right, or this array, excuse me, is never going to be possible to get through weighted quick union, because weighted quick union never gets any negative cycles or any cycles period, given that there wasn't any to begin with in our 2 sets. And so if you do have a cycle, then something went wrong, and so this wasn't a proper implementation of a weighted quick union with path compression. And so since there's a cycle, this first one is not possible. Okay, let's do the second one now. So we see we have 0 is connected to 9. So 9 is like the uppermost. And then we have 0 connected over here. Okay. Let's get the other ones out of the way first. So we also have 3 other ones connected to 9, 6, 7, and 8. So I'll put a 6 here, 7 here, and an 8 here. And then on top of that, we have 5 nodes connected to 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm just not going to draw circles for these, just for simplicity. Okay. So on first glance, it seems like it wouldn't be too bad, right? We wouldn't see anything inherently wrong. Like we see no cycles or anything that's like glaring in our face, right? But let's take a little closer inspection at this link right here, right? So we see that 0 is a subtree that has 5 different nodes in it, right? Or excuse me, 6 different nodes, including 0, right? So there's 6 nodes overall in this tree. Whereas in this tree, there's only 4, right? And so now let's think about when this connection was made, right? So when was this arrow introduced? There's 2 really extreme cases in which it could have been introduced. And everything in the middle sort of falls into one of these cases. So one case is that these 2 separate sets existed before we said connect 0, 9. So these 2 already were created before we said connect 0, 9. Then this connection never would have been possible, right? Because one of the things that we're guaranteed is that when we do weighted quick union, we always connect the smaller set to be the child of the larger set, right? So if we ran connect 0, 9 with this current setup, then actually this is the connection that would be made, right? 9's parent would be 0. Now let's take it the other way around. What if like these 5 arrows, none of these existed, and this was already here, right? So let's say this is the situation. So we connected 0 to 9 before we connected 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. In that case, what would happen is when we said now, let's say connect 5, 0, right? What we want is this to make it look like the tree from before. But what would actually happen is because of weighted quick union, we would connect 5 directly to 9, right? Because we connect parents to parents. And so for that reason, 2 is also never possible, right? Because we can't have we can't have subtrees like that are larger than the tree itself. Okay. The next one is C. And so immediately here, without even drawing it out, we can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, right? So we have basically a tree rooted at 9, and then basically have like a string 8, 7, 6, 5, all the way down to 1, right? And these are like kind of all connected to each other upwards, right? Let me draw this a little bit neater. Basically, we have like a one long string of nodes rather than like a tree-like structure. And so this is the first time that we're actually going to see our invariant come into play, right? So what's going to happen is that our invariant says right here that the height of any subtree, it must be less than log of n, where n is the number of nodes in that tree. Okay, so what that means is that for this tree rooted at 9 has, so n is equal to 10 for this guy, right? But the height of the subtree, right? So the height, it only has one subtree because it's just a long string. That subtree starts at 8 and ends at 1. And that's 9 nodes right there, right? And unfortunately, 9 is greater than log of 10, right? This is, so when we say log, we usually mean log base 2. So in this situation, 9 is greater than log base 2 of 10, which means that this invariant is broken. And that means that because it's an invariant, right? It has to be true for a properly implemented weighted quick union. That means that this must be impossible. And so a bit of intuition on why this invariant exists. It's really there because when you think about doing a weighted quick union and connecting parents to each other, you're always doing things logarithmically, right? Like if you have two sets, like 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 5, and 6, you generally don't, like, the way we do weighted quick union prevents us from stringifying things, right? Because one way that we might like make things stringy, like a big long line, is if you said connect 5, 3, and this connection was made, right? Then all of a sudden we have like this big long chain of nodes. But instead, what happens is we always connect parents to parents, which means that we avoid this, stringy linear length of nodes, right? We always sort of make things logarithmic, and that's why that invariant sort of exists. Okay, this next one, let's go ahead and draw this out. So we have a root at 0, right? And the negative 10 here, it's the negative of the size of that tree. So the size of this tree is going to be 10. There's going to be 10 nodes in it. So we make that negative to avoid confusion between the size and the actual parent nodes. So now we have 1, 2, 3, and 4, which are all children of 0. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then let's see, we have 5, 6, and 7, which are children of 1. 5, 6, 7. And then we have 8, which is a child of 6. And we have 9, which is a child of 2. Okay. So we immediately see that our longest subtree is this one right here, right? It's of length 3. And since there's 10 nodes in the subtree, or in the tree rooted at 0, right? N equals 10 here. 3 is actually less than log of 10, right? Which means that our invariant still holds, right? This rule that we have up here, that the subtree must be less than log of n, this is still true, right? And since we also don't see any cycles from before, we know that there's no problems with this tree, right? We haven't broken any of the rules that we've come up with to figure out if a weighted path compression tree is actually valid or not. So yeah, this one's actually fine, right? And if you went back on your own time, and you can come up with some connections actually to see how this tree might have been created. Okay, I'll erase all this. And now, oh shoot, actually I want to keep that. Okay, so the only difference between D and E here is this node, right? So now 9 is a child of 8 rather than a child of 2. So we simply move 9 over here. And immediately you see why this change was made is because it breaks that very invariant that we've been talking about this entire time, right? It's that, so now the maximum, so max sub tree height equals 4, right? Because there's a subtree of height 4 right here. And the issue is that 4 is greater than log 10, right? Because log 10 is like 3 point something. And so what that means is that now we've broken the rule, the invariant, and so this tree is no longer possible to create through path compression and a weighted quick union. Okay, and then finally, so you'll see that in a lot of these problems, it really just comes down to knowing this rule. And if you ever see this type of problem on an exam, it's really important to just keep this rule in mind so that you can just quickly, spit out a bunch of answers based on just counting out the number of nodes and the largest subtree. It's a really handy rule to have in your toolbox. Okay. Finally, we have a subtree with root 0. And then 2 and 3 are connected, or sorry, 1 and 2 are children of 0. And then 3 and 4 are children of 1. And 5 and 6 are children of 3. And then here we see that 7, 8, and 9 are actually their own subtree. So 8 and 9 are children of 7, but 7 has a negative root or a negative parent, which means that it's actually it is the root of the tree, but it's its own subtree, right? So it's like part of its own set. So basically, what this indicates is that these two sets are still disjoint, right? They haven't been unioned yet, for whatever reason. Okay, so now we see we're going to do our process again, right? Height, max height of a subtree is equal to 3, right? The max height is right here. And the n for this is no longer 10, right? Because now we have two disjoint sets, which means that the maximum height of this guy that's rooted at 0 is actually only 7. And, as we see, 3 is greater than log 7, right? Because log 8 is 3. Log base 2 of 8 is equal to 3, which means that log 7 is less than 3. And so once again, our invariant is broken, and this tree is also no longer possible. And yeah, so that's that's the general breakdown of this problem. Like I said, a lot of it is just understanding this big rule right here, and once you get that, you're kind of good to go. And you can really apply this to many different disjoint sets. So yeah, I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you guys next time.